Hello readers, it's Sasha, and today I am going to be talking about 10 books / series that I absolutely love but for some reason have never talked about on this channel. I guess I should preface this by saying they're not books that I've never talked about, they're just books that I've not talked enough about. So like, a lot of these books are books that I might have mentioned in passing as books I've really liked, but I've never given a reason as to why, and I've never recommended them to people. Actually, that's not true. There are a couple that I've recommended in passing. I just thought it would be fun to talk about some more underhyped and some less popular young adult books that I have loved over the years that I want to share with other people. So I'm gonna start off with the only book that was actually published in 2020, and I don't actually have the physical copy of the book because my mom has it, but I do have the dust jacket, and that is The Boy in the Red Dress by Kristen Lambert. This book is about a girl named Millie, and there is a boy named Marion who works at her aunt's speakeasy as kind of like the entertainer, and somebody shows up at their speakeasy on New Year's Eve in like the 1920s, 1930s, 1929 New Year's Eve, so both. But somebody shows up and she's claiming she knows a lot about Marion's past and is acting really weird about it, and then she shows up dead at the speakeasy and everybody's blaming Marion, but Millie doesn't actually think it's Marion, and so she's kind of on the hunt to see who actually did the murder. This book, for some reason, like a lot of people were talking about how much they were anticipating this book, how excited they were for this book, and then I've literally not heard a single person mention this book since I got it when it came out. So yeah, that's super weird. I absolutely adored this book. I thought it was really well done. I think Kristen Lambert, for a debut author, was really spot on in how she decided to portray a murder mystery, in how she decided to do it, and what she decided to play on the tricks and twists, and I just thought it was really brilliantly done, and I recommend this book to everybody. It's so good. Like, it's set in a speakeasy, which is such a brilliant place to have a murder mystery set. I don't think I've ever read a murder mystery set in a speakeasy, so I think that's really cool. And it also has this element of like representation. Millie is bisexual, Marion is kind of like a drag performer in the speakeasy, and everybody is just like allowed to love who they love, and this is the one place in town that they are able to feel safe and able to be themselves, and I think it's just a really fantastic book. And for it being a historical fiction, murder mystery, LGBT rep, it's really well done, and I think more people would get a kick out of this than would not get a kick out of this. So yes, that is that. I think more people should read it. I do have a full spoiler-free review that I did back in May, I think it was, May or June, so I'll link that down below because a lot of people have missed out on this brilliant opportunity of reading a book. So yes. Next is a book that I read, I think back in first year of university or something, and that is Immortal, Beloved by Kate Tiernan. This is a trilogy. This is a book about an immortal who is tired of like partying, and she's witnessed some things that she's just like, no thank you. So she goes to this home that is set in like literally the middle of nowhere for wayward immortals, and it's there that she starts to figure out what she's going to want to do with her life, what she wants to become as a person, and it's there that magic starts happening unexpectedly, and it's really fun. It's full of a lot of tricks, a lot of twists, a lot of wild times, and I honestly really like it. I had started rereading this sometime this year, but for some reason I put it down. I don't know why. I think it's because a book that I had ordered. Yes, oh my god. It's because Queen of Air and Darkness had come in, and I was kind of reading this as a filler, but I really do want to reread this at some point because it was a really great trilogy. It had a lot of great points, and yeah, it plays really well on the immortal trope, which I really liked. So I think you should read this. The next is one that I know a lot of people have read, but I know a lot of people also who have put it kind of to the side and have put it on the back burner, and don't do that. That is The Darkest Minds by Alexandra Bracken. This was a series that I was also late to reading. I think I read this back in late high school, early university, I want to say, and I fell in love with this. So this is about a pandemic, I think, that wiped out like a lot of people, but it gave certain kids powers, and these kids were all sent to live in like camps because powers were terrifying to like the adults that had lived. And this is about Ruby, who escapes and is trying to find solace and a new place to live, and meets up with these kids, and it's just a really great trilogy. Like, the first book was brilliant, fantastic. I loved Alexandra Bracken's writing and her style in this. I thought it was really well done. The second and third books, while I really liked them, they definitely weren't the best. So go into that knowing that the second and third book they're not the best, but they're good. Like, they're still really, really good. And I still think people should really read them because I think they're great. And some of the surprises and the twists and the way that she reveals certain things throughout the trilogy are really cool, and I think they added a little bit to the experience that I wasn't expecting. But overall, I really loved this series. I know a lot of people who have decided to kind of put it on the back burner as more of like a, oh, this was a young adult dystopian from a while ago. But if you're still into dystopian a little bit and you still think you could get a kick out of the kind of like fantasy element, read it because it's really good. And if you read Lore and didn't like it, not naming names, you still might like this because I didn't really love Lore as much, and I thought her writing was really not that great in Lore, but I really enjoyed her writing in this. And maybe that was because I was younger, but for some reason I just don't think so. I think it would still hold up right now. So read this. Another young adult that was published in 2003, I was literally 4 years old, I did not know that, was A Great and Terrible Beauty by Libba Bray. I had no idea that this book was so old because when I read it, I was in my first year of university, and I know that specifically because I read it in the study lounge when I was supposed to be studying for my intro to psych exams. So there's that. But this book follows this girl. Okay. The back of the book literally says Gemma Doyle is not like other girls. Ignore that. Literally ignore that. That's not the attitude that is portrayed in this book, at least when I found that, but that's really awkward. But it's essentially about, it's a historical fiction, and this girl Gemma is sent to an island as kind of like a home for kids because her parents were going away or they died. Yeah, something happened to them. And she realizes that she's not actually alone. She's being followed by this dude, and it's weird and it's crazy, and there's a lot of fantasy elements and there's a lot of like historical fiction elements, obviously because it's a historical fiction. It does take place in 1895, so there are definitely historical fiction elements, but overall I've loved everything that Libba Bray has written that I've read. So if you've read The Diviners and loved it, if you've read Beauty Queens and loved it, then I would recommend reading A Great and Terrible Beauty because it is old, but I do think it holds up pretty well. Minus the first sentence of the back of the book, because that's no, but it's fine. Next is a book that I really adored. It was 3 books and I ate them up. My mom got me the entire trilogy for Christmas. I had never heard of this series, but this, I mean like Christmas like a while ago, but I had never heard of the series, and then I read it and I was like, this is the best series ever. It's not, but like it's really good. And that is Angel Burn by L.A. Weatherly. This is essentially about a pretty average normal girl, as they all are, and life is pretty average and normal until people start worshiping angels as opposed to worshiping God, because angels have started coming and making themselves known. And then there's bad angels that come down and are bad and like take over and want to do bad things. Oh my god, why is the back of the book, the start of it is Willow isn't like other girls? Do I just have issues? But essentially, Willow has a gift that she's kind of been hiding, but it's linked to these angels somehow. So that is that. I think this trilogy is great. I think it's really good. I think it holds up pretty well. I really want to reread it, but I am not impressed with how this is always working. But it's also a romance. Like it's a young adult romance, so it's not like smut but it is a romance, so go into that knowing that this is going to focus heavily on a romance because it is a fantasy romance trilogy, but young adult. Next is a book that I read in junior high, which was probably a bad decision, but I like to make those. So yeah, Battle Royale by Kushan Takami and then translated by Yuji Oniki. This shit was gruesome, brutal. It was everything. It was so good. So Battle Royale is essentially like Hunger Games, but it's like the original Hunger Games, like it came before, and it's better in my personal opinion, just because they weren't afraid to hold back. But yeah, so essentially what happened was it is this group of 9th graders who are going on a class field trip, and they are all gassed in their bus, and then they're taken to this island where they have to all kill each other except one person, and that person is a survivor. And they just do it to random 9th grade classes, I think, or random junior high, but I'm pretty sure it's 9th grade all around the city. And yeah, the main character Shuya is the person that we're following most often in this book, and we're following his POV as he is dealing with having to kill people and watching people he knows get killed brutally and violently by his classmates. So it's real gory. It's real good. When I was in junior high, I saw this book in a bookstore, and one of my friends was like, yeah, so this is the original Hunger Games. And I had just read the Hunger Games and I was obsessed with it. And so my dear old friend got it for me for Christmas, and I read it all and I loved it. And then I got my mom to read it and she loved it. But yeah, it's very brutal, very gruesome, but it's definitely a really good read. Next is a book called Angel Fall by Susan E. This is another post-apocalyptic angel world thing. So sorry, there's a theme I had, but it does not say that she was like other girls. So there we go. But this is essentially about a girl who is living in the angel apocalypse. So angels have come over, yeah, they've come over for tea. They've taken over the world and are destroying like everything and everyone and doing like human experimentation, all this stuff. And so this girl named Penryn, which I still don't understand the name, but when I was younger, I wanted to name my future children Penryn because I was like, that's edgy. It's not. This girl's younger sister gets taken away by an angel. And so obviously she's trying to find her younger sister. And she's also dealing with her mother who has a severe mental illness. I don't think it's explicitly said what she has, but I believe the way that it's kind of described is more of like she's along the lines of like psychosis or schizophrenia, one or the other. So yeah, that is what she's dealing with. And then she meets an angel he's kind of been exiled, and they get together and they're trying to find the little sister, and he's trying to seek revenge, and it's a whole thing. But I loved this. I thought it was great for this is a very short fantasy. It's not even 300 pages, and neither are the other two books, I don't think. But for being so short, these books really pack a punch. They really have a hard-hitting impact, and they really have a lot of world building and a lot of character development. And I think that's what draws me to this story a lot more. But also, let's just discuss how pretty the covers are. Like, who gave the permission to be so beautiful? But this is another series that I really want to reread because it just packed such a heavy punch when I read it the first time. And I know reading it the second time, I feel like I would also love it. Like I don't know, but it's one of those ones that I think will definitely hold up. So the next book that I have to recommend is a fantasy book that I read in junior high. And it is like a 5 or 6 book series. So it is a commitment, but it's worth it. Let me explain to you why. Let's talk about the cover first. First let's talk about the title. This is The Alchemist by Michael Scott. And the cover, my ring light doesn't like her, but oh yeah, there she is. Stunning. Absolutely gorgeous. And the entire series looks like this, but it follows a bunch of legendary figures in modern day. So this one follows Nicholas Flamel, who was a real person, I think. Yeah, so the truth, Nicholas Flamel was born in Paris on September 28, 1330. The records show that he died in 1418. But his tomb is empty. And this actually follows Nicholas Flamel as a person, and then Sophie and Josh Newman, who are twins that come to work at a bookstore, and then they find themselves in a world of shit because a book that is supposed to be being protected that has to do with Nicholas Flamel is now in the hands of a scary evil man. So this is definitely, it gears more toward middle grade, I would say. But throughout the entire series, we see a lot of really interesting characters that were once alive in real life, but are brought into modern day storytelling. And I think it's really cool. And I loved it. I really, really enjoyed it. Another series that I would be totally down to reread because it's really cool. I don't know if all the books take place in San Francisco, but one of them takes place in San Francisco, and some of it takes place on Alcatraz, which is a place that I've been. And now that I've been there, I feel like I would look at it completely different because I actually know what it looks like inside Alcatraz from my own personal lens. So I feel like reading this now would be a completely different experience than reading it when I was a lot younger for multiple reasons. But this is one that I recommend if you're looking for a young adult, middle grade type story, one that is technically young adult, but the characters are a bit younger, or if you're looking for a middle grade that kind of veers towards more young adult, I think this would work for both. And I also just think Michael Scott is a really great storyteller in this, so I recommend it. I have only two more, and then we're good. So the first is another trilogy, and this trilogy is Feed by Mira Grant, aka Shannon McGuire. So if anybody has read the Wayward Children series or Middle Game, this is another book that she has written just under a pen name. And so this is essentially an adult sci-fi dystopian where zombies have taken over, but not really taken over. Like, they're part of everyday life, but there's still a president, there's still schools, like there are still things going on, but people just have to actually like be aware of zombies. And so this gets really heavy into politics and really heavy into journalism because our main character is a journalist and she starts working with the president of the United States on his team. And so it gets very, very political, but honestly, This book slaps. Like, it's so good. The whole trilogy, it is a lot, but this book is definitely the best. There's something about it. It's just so cool. It takes place in the near future, I believe. So the year was 2014, and then 20 years later. So 2034 it takes place in, so it's a near future, and I'm just really excited about it. I really loved it. I don't think it's a book that I would reread because I feel like the series as a whole, I don't necessarily know if it would stand up in my own opinion. Now that I know all the twists and tricks and turns and excitements and revelations, I don't think it would hold up as well for myself. But for people who haven't read this before, this would be a journey, so I highly recommend it. And finally, this is a book that I have mentioned in great detail before on this channel in multiple videos. I've mentioned it, but I don't think I've ever like actually physically like sat down, recommended it as one of the books that I think people should read, but it is, and that is Frontlines by Michael Grant. Frontlines is truly one of my favorite series of all time, if not my favorite series of all time. So it follows 3 women in World War II. It follows Rio, Frangie, and Rainey. Rio is white, Frangie's black, and Rainey is Jewish. And obviously World War II, very different experiences for different women and men, but women, which is what we're focusing on here in that time period. But it also takes on the extra added element of they are enlisted in the war. So women, instead of only men being enlisted, this is kind of an alternate history where women are also enlisted as well. And so Rainey is enlisted to fight. Frangie is enlisted as kind of a medical, I believe she's a doctor, not doctor, but like a nurse. And Rainey is intelligence. So it follows the 3 of them separately because they come from completely different worlds, and it follows their journeys as they navigate through World War II, and it is powerful. Like, it is really, I want to reread it because I want to know if it still holds up, but it was extremely powerful when I read it the first time. Everything about these books, the entire trilogy, it follows real life events that happened in the war, like real battles that were fought, real situations that happened, and it follows them from the beginning of the war all the way to the end of the war. And then there are a few chapters that I think take place like 20, 30, 40 years later after the war at the end of the 3rd book. And it is everything. It is so powerful. It is so moving. It is so genuinely well done. It is gory, but to the point where it's like still able to be read by young audiences. It's just so well done. Like, it's hard to explain without like fangirling and gushing to the point of no return, but I loved this. I loved this book so much. I highly recommend anybody, even if you don't really like historical fiction, I feel like this is something that you might be interested in because it is an alternate history. It follows women, and it follows badass women. It follows women who weren't sure of themselves going into a war but turn out to be incredible and have major impacts on the war in the best possible way. And it's really good. And for a male author, I felt like he wrote these female characters pretty appropriately. When I read it the first time, I was never deterred by anything that he said about the female characters, where I know sometimes I will read male authors who write female characters and I'll be like, what are you doing? But I didn't feel that way with this, so go into the book knowing that as well. But yeah, this is a book that you would definitely have to check out trigger warnings for. There are obviously trigger warnings for violence, death, suicide, war, obviously, racism, homophobia, lots and lots and lots of trigger warnings. But I actually feel like it was well done, and you could tell that there was a lot of research put into this. I got Noah to read it. He absolutely loved it. My mom read it. My friends read it. I've literally given this to everybody, so I'm highly recommending it to you guys as well. So that is everything today. Those are the 10 books / series that I want to recommend to you guys to read in the future, near future, hopefully, so I can talk to some people about what has been said in these series, because I need to gush. But yes, let me know in the comments below if you've read any of these already. There are some definitely more popular series in here that I feel like more people would have read, but there are definitely some underhyped ones as well. So let me know in the comments below if there are any that you're looking to read, if you've read any at all ever, and yeah, tell me how you feel about these. I love to discuss, I love to have conversations. So with that being said, thank you for tuning into this video. Please do not forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more content. I do post twice a week, and there will be some really fun content coming in March that I'm sure you won't want to miss out on. And until next time, bye readers!